Massachusetts were all court-referred parents who had their kids removed due to abuse and neglect. So, and we're seeing in the newspaper right now a huge amount of information about the foster care system and how insufficient that is. And I would go back one step further and say that we don't have the kinds of support young people need, the education that we need for them to become good parents before they become parents, as opposed to waiting until they run into a bad situation or are have their children removed due to abuse and neglect. We need a lot more support for parents. We really need a lot of education as well. And the important part about discipline and punishment is really developing skills that are really not that hard to learn, but that really take self-control to implement and use in your family and with your children. So teachers get a lot more education about that in terms of early childhood development than parents do. So I would say discipline and punishment is probably the most important thing about knowing that the difference between those two ways of dealing with children, because they're really profoundly different. Discipline is about helping children to do it better the next time. Punishment is about making children feel bad about doing something wrong. But they can't go back and correct. They can only correct it going forward.
This is true, and I can truly say I've seen both sides of the spectrum on that. And my parents raised me where, if I did something wrong, I got smacked for it. I'm not going to lie, but I learned not to do it again.
Mm-hmm.
But they never abused me in any way. But they had such a power over me that it was like instilled fear. Not do that again. So, yeah, but moving on. You have taught child, family, teacher relations for numerous years, correct?
Yes, I did, and that was insightful. I did that at USF, and it was a required course for early and elementary education majors. And one of the things I learned about that was fascinating because it was, textbook, and it was a lot. Most of my students were in the real world. They were working in child care centers or working with children in one way or another. And they really did not want to work with parents. I required them to do a parent involvement activity for their final grade. And they would hem and haw. They would be willing to write papers. They would be willing to do additional research. They would be willing to do all kinds of things. But they tried like hell, to
That's okay.
to avoid doing a parent involvement activity. However, I allowed them to work in groups, so they could work in groups of 2 to 3. When they did that activity, it was the most satisfying thing that they did. They loved it, and it kind of broke a pattern of being kind of intimidated by parents or not feeling like their expertise was, with young children, and they were not really excited about working with parents. So that was very eye-opening for me, and I thought that I got a great deal of satisfaction of that. And actually it reminds me of another 4-year-old story. That was one of my students taught gymnastics, and he had a class of 4-year-olds. And one of his students was very aggressive. She was always wanted to be at the front of the line and would end up pushing other kids out of the way. And to the point where he had to take her aside and say, "You can't do that, it hurts kids." And so he asked for my advice about that, and I said, well, you need to help her, give her a choice of what she can do. And I didn't really complete the thought that I should have, because what he did the next time he came into class was he said, well, I gave her a choice. I said, is there anything else you could think of besides pushing her out of the way? And the little girl thought for a minute, and she said, I could pull her hair. And that was the wrong answer, but he didn't give her choices that were acceptable choices. He just let her choose a choice. So that was one of the things that I learned. It's always important to say, you can do this or this. Which would you choose? Rather than that kind of a situation where it's kind of open-ended.
Okay.
So that was my lesson.
So what prompted you to write a series of books for children about health and safety issues?
That was actually prompted by, I was at a Head Start program, and a mom came to pick up her daughter, and the little girl, 4-year-old, was recovering from injuries that she sustained in a car accident where her baby sister had been thrown from the car and killed. And I watched the mom put the little girl in the back seat, no car seat, no seatbelt, and I thought, you know what? 4-year-olds can put seatbelts on themselves. Let me do something that can help them just do that. So that was the first book I wrote, and then I continued the series. One is called What About Lunch, and it's about healthy eating and exercise. And they were piloted. There were 3 books, and the other one is called The Little Chicken That Could. And I have a lot more, but those are the 3 that are in print. And the books really were effective. The teachers at Alta Vista Elementary in Sarasota, 7 classrooms, did before and after interviews with the kids about the seatbelt use before. They introduced the books in the classroom. Even the kids at first grade level, which we found to be the best age for the books, if they couldn't read very well or if they were primarily non-English speaking, they could still follow the books because they rhymed, and they were very colorful pictures. So the books were introduced in the classroom. They were read a few times in the classroom and discussed, then brought home for the children to read to their families. And what we saw was that the seatbelt use on the part of the children went from about 72% to 100%, and the kids reported that their big sisters or parents were now using seatbelts. That went from about 40% to about 75%. So we had very concrete feedback, and we had some of that with other of the books as well, but that was the easiest one to measure.
Okay. Well, I know time's getting away from us, and we're coming up on our 3-minute marker. So at this time, I want to just finish off one quick question. What would you like to see that would be better prepare young people to become good parents, if you can sum that up?
Very quickly, I'd just like to say I would like for us to see courses in high school before people become parents about relationships, about civics, what our responsibility is, not only in relationships but in our community, and about what good parenting means, what we need to know about ourselves, and a little bit about child development. And I think it would really help teenagers to know more about their own development, because so much is happening with them, and that would put them in a place that really would help them to become better parents when they are in that situation.
All right, so Marlene, this is the part of the show where I like to give my guests the opportunity to give out their contact information. So if anyone has any questions, comments, or they want to get a hold of you, just to even get your book, now's the time to do any website, phone number, email, so go for it.
Okay, my website is www.marlenesimons.com, and my email is mresnick, RESNICK, @comcast.net. And I would be delighted to hear from anyone. And should I include my phone number?
Yes, please do.
Okay, it's 941-726-5974. And the book is available. It was just launched yesterday. Nobody's Perfect, Parenting in a World of Change. It's in ebook form, so very inexpensive. And I would love people to get it and review it.
Awesome. Well, I want to thank you again for being on Socially Joe as my guest. I I love the time that we spent here and learned more about you, the book, and everything. And I encourage all my listeners to try to reach out to Marlene, learn more, and get this book. It's very tantalizing for the brain, if you want to say that.
Thank you so much, Joe. I really appreciate your time and your questions.
No, not a problem. Thank you, Marlene, for being part of the show. Have a great day.
Okay, take care. You too. Bye-bye.